Are you ready to scale and outsource your business?
Okay, let's go.
Welcome to the Outsourcing and Scaling Show. I'm your host, Nathan Hirsch, a show where we talk about everything Amazon, Shopify, e-commerce, and digital marketing. Let's get started. Hey everyone, back with another episode of Outsourcing and Scaling. Today I have a very special guest, Dennis Brown. Dennis, how you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me, Nathan.
Yeah, thanks for being here. For those of you that don't know, Dennis Brown has built 3 multi-million-dollar businesses during his 25-year career as an entrepreneur. During that time, his companies have been ranked 7X on the prestigious 5,000 fastest growing company list. He's the author of The 7 Habits of Highly Successful LinkedIn Users and has generated over 20 million in new business from LinkedIn and social selling. Pretty impressive. He's also the host of the top-rated podcast, Growth Experts, where he and his guests share proven growth strategies, tactics, and tools. Dennis, thanks so much for being here. And I want to talk about all of that. But first, let's take a gigantic step back to growing up. What kind of kid were you? Were you a rebel? Were you a straight A student? Did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
I didn't know I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Honestly, I really had no clue what an entrepreneur was back then. Nobody in my family was an entrepreneur. I hadn't been really exposed to it. So I never really had those thoughts early on. Of course, I always had the side jobs and the side hustle, mowing lawn. And my grandfather grew up had a farm, so I'd work with him on the farm and help him, but never really any aspirations of becoming an entrepreneur. I was a bit of an underachiever. I probably didn't work as hard in school because it came a little easier to me, and played a lot of sports, wrestled all through high school and college. And then it was after college that I kind of got the entrepreneurial bug.
Awesome. So what college did you go to? What did you major in?
I went to the University of Buffalo, which is right here in my backyard. I'm from Buffalo, Western New York area. And my degree is in pre-law. So I have a pre-law degree, but I decided not to continue on to law school. Went out, got my first sales job, started making a bunch of money, and thought at that point that I could do it better than they did. And started my first venture and failed miserably.
So a lot of people I've never had a corporate job, and I feel like certain parts of having a corporate job or more real world job experience helps you as an entrepreneur. Do you feel that way? Are there any skills that you learned while having a real job that maybe you wouldn't have if you didn't go through that experience?
Yeah, I give the advice I give young people who are curious and want to become an entrepreneur is I paint 2 pictures. The first picture is the equivalent of getting punched in the face for about 5 or 10 years. Okay, so that's just the reality. That's what happened to me. It took me about almost 10 years to really get my footing. I tried a lot of things. I learned a lot of things, but I learned them through trial and error. I didn't have a lot of mentors. I didn't have a lot of structure. I was bouncing around with ideas. I'd make a little bit of money. I'd lose a little bit of money. I'd make a little bit of money. And I just couldn't get any rhythm. I never hit that right project. Or maybe it was the right project, but it was the wrong time for me and I wasn't ready to really execute on it. So that's the one version I paint for young entrepreneurs. The other version is go learn some skills, go learn some soft skills, go learn some hard skills, make yourself valuable, figure out what you really want to do, look at the market, see what people are doing, look at the trends, see where you're at, get a good footing using corporate America's money, right, for a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or even 5 years, right, and get your footing under you. And then at that point, if you still really think you want to be an entrepreneur, you can do it a little bit more strategically than I did.
I like it. And I always wish that I had that experience. I don't think I would have been happy working in the corporate job, but definitely some experience there. You mentioned that you failed a lot, at least early on. Talk to me about what those failures were and what you learned.
Oh my God, they were so long ago. So I graduated from college in 1992. I got a sales job in March before I graduated in May, right? So a few months before I graduated, I was the worst sales guy they had ever hired. Okay? I was horrible. And went on, kind of figured it out after about 6 months and then became the best sales guy in the office.
Okay.
6 months later, thought that I figured it all out, started my first venture. I tried a bunch of different things. I tried, back then, this is probably way too way too long ago for you. But back then, you remember 900 numbers? They would market these different 900 numbers, and they'd have all. I actually tried that, made a little bit of money doing it, but it just wasn't. I just didn't like it. You know, it was one of those things where you just kind of tried something. I also did a liquidation business where I would get liquidated goods from different manufacturers, distributors, last year's models, 2 years ago model, and then get them at a really low price and then resell them. That would be a great business now, but wasn't a great business then because there was no internet, right? There really wasn't an internet, right? This was back in the early 90s before the internet really became popular. There were other things. I tried to do some publishing. There was all kinds of different things I tried, right? That I was interested in and I thought were compelling, but after 6 or 8 or 10 months of trying some of those things, I realized that, it just wasn't working. So I would pivot into something new. And finally I started it was called diverse funding. And what we did is it was kind of like a really niche funding business where we would buy owner-held mortgages. We actually brokered owner-held mortgages, structured settlements, lottery winnings. So there was anything that was an annuity where it was paid over time. People wanted cash up front. We would buy those. That business worked really well. I was making 6 figures in that business, but then got an opportunity to join a startup in the tech industry right in the late 90s, and actually closed that business because it wasn't sellable because it was only me. Closed that business to pursue that, and that was the first business that my partner and I ever took to 7 figures.
Wow. So along that way, I'm assuming you hired a good amount of people, right?
Yeah, early on, there probably wasn't a lot of hiring. I was the chief cook and bottle washer. I was doing it all, right? But along the way, I started hiring some people that were helping with administrative and billing and even salespeople. But remember, a lot of this is pre-internet, right? My early days as an entrepreneur is really pre-internet, or not pre-internet, early internet. You're talking, everybody thought AOL was the internet back then, right? So not to age myself because I know I only look 29, but I'm not.
So let's talk about now. I mean, how has your business mindset shifted from, obviously you go from corporate to some early years and some failures and maybe being a little bit ahead of your times to now where everything's online. You're using LinkedIn a ton. You've written a book. Talk to me about what your business is like today and how you've structured it.
So my business today, because I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years and I've had some successful exits, I started a company, a B2B service company in 2003, later sold that company in 2016 after growing it to about 80 million in sales. So my business has changed dramatically. I'm not in the mindset right now to go work 80 or 100 hours a week like I used to. I'm not in the mindset to go out and grow a huge team or $100 million business like my previous goals. I'm much more focused on more of a lifestyle business. I have young kids. I've got a 9-year-old. I got a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old, both girls. So I like spending a lot of time with them, a lot of time with my family. So I work from home. So my team now is more virtual, right? So, which is a great part of the internet and the times we're at right now. So I have probably, my business right now, I probably have 5 people on my team, and they're all virtual, 100%. A couple of them are in the States. The rest are abroad, whether that be in, India, Pakistan, Philippines, and then just different project work that I'll do depending upon what the project is. But my business now is predominantly I do LinkedIn coaching, consulting, and I have a course that's coming out pretty soon, my LinkedIn marketing course called Linked Academy. That'll be coming out shortly. So between the consulting and coaching and online courses, that's predominantly what I'm doing now because it's something that scales a little bit better for me. And it's something that I really enjoy. I love doing internet marketing. I love doing content marketing. I love doing lead gen, and LinkedIn happened to be one of those tools that I used to build my own business. When I had a B2B service company, my logistics company, we used LinkedIn to generate over $20 million in new business for that B2B service company. I had no intentions of consulting or creating a course. I did it because I had to, scratch my own itch, right? I needed a way to generate new clients. And so that became our go-to platform, and we leveraged it really well. Just so happened that when I pivoted out of there, LinkedIn started to blow up, social media really blew up. And so, I accidentally fell into a consulting and coaching business that became very profitable. So.
And I want to talk about LinkedIn, but first, talk to me a little bit more about managing a remote team, communication, organizing them, motivating them. Well, what have you learned, and how do you do that effectively?
I learned that I really sucked at it when I first started because I was used to managing everybody under one roof, right? And it was a lot easier to do that. So what I learned is that I didn't have a framework for it. So I kind of learned through trial and error. What I know now is this. In regards to hiring, the thing that hiring isn't that difficult, right? There's a lot of platforms out there like you and the internet in general where you can find people that are looking for freelance work, right? There's no shortage of people that want freelance work, okay? In almost any realm. I don't care if it's marketing, sales, administrative, whatever, right? You can find them. They're out there. But my thing is, I think the most important part, or the most important thing that I've learned, is the onboarding process, right? This is where I think it all falls apart or it succeeds. So most people, let's speak to myself and just maybe my small circle of friends where we've had this conversation, is that, most of them, the first time they hire a VA or a freelancer, they bring them on and they just start loading a bunch of work on them. And then they check in on them maybe a week later or 2 weeks later, and they expect all that work to be done and done perfectly. And that, I promise you, is not going to happen. So it needs to be very hands-on. It should be very hands-on for the first period of time until they get their legs under them. Don't make the assumption that they know how to do everything perfect and they know it exactly the way you want to do it. So I think onboarding is the most critical step when you're hiring a virtual team. Now, how I do that, typically what I do is I communicate with them typically through Zoom or through Skype, right? And we have regular communications, particularly during the early days. And then the other thing that I do is I actually take the time to create, if I have a job that they're supposed to do, say it's working on my blog and posting my podcast episodes, right? Maybe they're publishing my podcast episodes to Libsyn for the Growth Experts podcast, or maybe they're publishing my podcast episodes to my website. I'll create a video using what's it called? It's right here. Let's see. Using one of the screen grab software, right? I forgot what it's called. Jing maybe or something, right? Using one of the screen grab softwares, and I'll actually walk through the exact steps. Here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3, here's step 4. And it's visual, it's audio, everything's there. I send that to them and I say, get back to me with questions. If they don't have any questions, I say, go ahead. If they have questions, we move forward. I give them one task at a time. Once they get proficient at that, I'll add another task. So it's really just taking baby steps and being more involved and not making assumptions that they're going to be able to just hit the ground running.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that was all great information from someone. I think a lot of people hear that from me, but I talk about that all the time. It's great hearing it from someone who's built a bunch of businesses and has a team of VAs. Let's talk about LinkedIn. You're on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I've gotten plenty of clients from there. I do okay. I'm sure it could be better. What should people know about LinkedIn, and what should they be using LinkedIn for that they're not doing?
First, what they need to know about LinkedIn is that don't sleep on LinkedIn. It's that other platform that isn't talked about a lot. You hear a lot about Facebook. You hear a lot about Instagram. You used to hear a lot about Snapchat. But anyway, the point is you hear about these other platforms, and I think a lot of people sleep on LinkedIn because it was always looked at as that recruiting and job site, right? Excuse me. But it's really shifted. It's now a platform where not only can you hire and find talent, right, and get a job, but it's the number one platform for B2B marketing and sales. Okay, unequivocally for B2B, it's the place to be. So if you're selling to a business, that's where you need to be. And it's kind of like the gold rush era of LinkedIn right now. A lot has changed in the last couple of years since Microsoft purchased LinkedIn. Now, I don't know if they're directly connected, but I don't care because timing is great. At one point, it was a lot harder to leverage LinkedIn because content was not a predominant part of how you would be able to generate, leads and sales. Now, there's three primary ways you can generate leads and sales with LinkedIn. You can do like a targeted outreach type campaign, almost like a cold email type campaign, but through LinkedIn, which is outreach and nurturing with some very specific and strategic messaging to try to cultivate a conversation and generate that offline. That's kind of an outreach strategy. You've got the content strategy, which is using predominantly these days LinkedIn updates, which is kind of like little micro blogs or images. And now LinkedIn has native video, plus they're launching live video, right? So there's a beta program for live video. So creating content is now the biggest way that I use to generate leads. The third way is to do advertising, right? To LinkedIn ads. Now that's paid. It's significantly more expensive than Facebook. But when you look at the lifetime value of a typical B2B client versus the lifetime value of a client on Facebook, it's very different. So you don't mind spending $100 on a lead or $1,000 or $5,000 to get a client if your lifetime value is 50, 100, several hundred thousand. You don't mind that. So the one that I think that most people can tap into right now, if they're smart, is using content, using LinkedIn marketing. Because most people that are online are already creating some form of content, blogs or YouTube videos or podcasts or something, right? They're creating some form of content. And so you can start leveraging that content on LinkedIn. I'll give you a perfect example. In 2018, I generated over 3,500 inbound leads, people that reached out to me through my content and asked a question and asked for help. 3,500 inbound leads with no advertising, 100% organic. Wow. 3,500 inbound leads. It cost me zero. And all I did was publish and post content, 3 to 5 days a week, but it was very targeted, very relevant to those target markets. It got a lot of engagement, and then engagement breeds engagement, right? And so all of a sudden, some posts will get several thousand views, some posts will get hundreds of thousands of views, but ultimately 3,500 inbound leads. I had so many inbound leads, I couldn't touch them all, couldn't even nurture them all. But, through that, generated multiple six figures for a consulting business that I paid nothing for the ads. Everybody asked me, do you do paid ads at all? No, I don't have time, right? I don't have time. I don't need paid ads because LinkedIn is so good right now.
So I actually do get a good amount of leads through LinkedIn. I post content every day. Some of my content gets not 100,000, but thousands of views. Some of it doesn't, and it flops. Maybe it gets 100 or whatever.
Right.
What are the keys to that? Is it the hook? Is it the right hashtags? How do you maximize the amount of people that see your content? And yes, you want to make it specific to your niche, but in my case, any business owner, free up applies to. So how do people figure out how to get more views and also make sure that the right people are viewing that content?
So a couple of tips, and I can give you guys a resource at the end of this if you guys want. I created a guide called the Ultimate Guide to Generating Inbound Leads with LinkedIn. That was a guide that I put together. It's a 22-page guide that I put together, trial and error, of a year and a half worth of my own testing on what worked and what didn't work and kind of the framework of how to do that. And obviously I don't have time to go into that whole thing right now, but I'll share a couple of things with you. Number one, if you want leads, what happens is if somebody sees your content, typically if they like your content, they're going to go over to your profile and they're going to scrub you a little bit, right? They're going to qualify. Right. They're going to say, what's this guy's background? What's his story? Is he legit? So the first thing you need to do, you just have, and I hate to start here, but it's honest, you have to have a strong profile. You got to make a good first impression with your profile because the content is what gets them there, but it's your profile, your experience, your background, and how they feel about you after they see your profile that they're going to determine whether they're going to really start asking you questions or engage with you. So you got to optimize that profile. Don't make it look like a resume. Make sure it looks more like a personal website, a bio, like a resource for clients. And that's number one, right? Got to do that. And I know that's very simple and everybody says that, but you can have the greatest content. And if your profile sucks, nobody's going to ask you a question. Nobody's going to engage with you. That's just the way. Right. Okay. So another one is stop automating your LinkedIn updates. And what I mean by that is Hootsuite and Buffer and MeetEdgar and all these tools. They're great tools. Okay. I've used them for different platforms and I used to use them for LinkedIn. But I believe, personally, I believe that you're penalized by LinkedIn and other platforms for posting using these automation tools. Why? Because they don't want you to necessarily automate your posts. They want you to be on the platform. One of their primary measurements is time on platform, right? They don't track how many posts. That's not, they do, but that's a secondary focus. It's really time on platform. How much time are you spending on Facebook? How much time are you spending on Instagram? And how much time are you spending on LinkedIn? And if you're not spending time there, then then they don't like that, right? Their goal is for you to spend more time. So stop automating your posts. Another good one, just a couple here that I think would make sense, is engage. This is one that a lot of people don't do. And I don't know if you do or not, Nathan, but I think it would help a lot if you don't. You start getting engagement with a post, right? Like you get some likes, you get some comments, right? But then what happens is you don't engage back with those people.
Right.
I call it engaging with your engagers. And most people say, Dennis, that just doesn't scale. I don't have time to do that. Well, I got news for you. Sometimes it's not always about scale. Sometimes in order to grow, you got to do things that are unscalable. So I make it a point to, anytime I can, as much as I can, to reply back and comment and respond back to those people that are engaging with my posts. And what I find is this: they don't necessarily respond more in that post, but they're significantly more likely to respond to future posts, right? Because they got some engagement with me. Everybody's replied to somebody's post or to somebody's blog comment and never heard back. Well, guess what? The likelihood is you're never going to respond again. You're never going to engage because you didn't get any love, right? You didn't get any love back. And then with your content, the other thing that I see a lot of people making mistakes is they don't ask for engagement. So in almost every one of my posts, I always say, reply below with this, and I ask a question, or I have some sort of call to action. It's not a buy. It's not a sell. It's just a give me some feedback. And because if you don't ask, you don't get, right? So if you ask, and you ask in the right way, and it's a soft ask where you're not asking for them to enter their email address or do something crazy, people will reply. So those are just a few things you can do to really engage the content, other than obviously just having really good content. And, like anything else in any content marketing, the headline always matters, right? So spend time, putting that headline together of what that content is, because again, they're going to make a first impression on your content based upon that headline typically. And if you don't make a good first impression, and you don't make it compelling, they probably won't read it or watch it, right? So those are a few things. And start using video. Video is hot right now. LinkedIn loves video. They launched native video last year, and it's been received extremely well. And now they're launching live. Now you can't get live yet because it's still in beta, but start using video, because it gets like Facebook in the heyday, right? Which is not today. In the heyday, when they started launching video, when you could do video content and live content, they put all the algorithm and all the juice and all the love towards the video. And that's where all the virality was. Well, now you get very little engagement with Facebook, but now is, like I said, that's why I called it kind of like the gold rush era for LinkedIn, is that if you start leveraging that same sort of content, you can get crazy love.
Awesome. Dennis, this has been great. I learned a lot. Guys, check out his book. Dennis, how can people find out more about you, and what are you excited about in 2019?
What I'm excited about in 2019 is I'm launching my course, Linked Academy. That's going to be my LinkedIn marketing and social selling system. I was supposed to launch it in 2017, 2018. I didn't do it. I just got too tied up. So that is going to be coming very soon. I'm excited about my podcast, Growth Experts. We've had it for the last year. We just got ranked in the top 100 for business podcasts. So that, I promise you, is not easy. So that means the content is hitting home. And if anybody wants to reach out to me or connect with me, connect on LinkedIn. It's Ask Dennis Brown. Or you can just go to my website, askdennisbrown.com.
Awesome. Dennis, thanks so much for coming on, and have a great rest of the day. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. Did you enjoy this content? If so, click like, leave us a comment, and subscribe to our channel so we can continue bringing you great content all about hiring.